Today we're joined by my friends from the Iranian community, Babak and Naveed, for a thoughtful and timely conversation. Together, they'll be unpacking some of the most prescient misconceptions about the Iranian diaspora's position on the current war, and exploring the crucial distinction between the Iranian people and the Islamic Republic as a governing regime. They'll also shed light on the strategies the Islamic Republic uses to cultivate support in Western countries. Tactics that often complicate public understanding and shape the narratives we encounter in media and policy spaces. It's an important dialogue, rooted in lived experience and historical memory, and a shared commitment to clarity and justice. I'm grateful you are here with us. Let's get into the conversation. I'm going to ask that Babak please introduce himself first, and then we're also joined by Naveed on the line.
Hello, Alnur. Hello, gang. Yes, my name is Babak Yousefi. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, and a political activist. Happy to be here today.
Naveed?
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Naveed, Varkana, and I'm happy to discuss and talk about anything that is interested in this.
Thank you so much, both of you, for taking this time out and basically just informing us, as it were. So I want to start out by asking Babak to situate for us how he perceives the left here in the West and how it may be aligning itself with the Iranian regime. Babak?
I think, Alnur, you and I met over a couple of decades ago over activism. That's what brought us together to begin with. That's how we became friends. And I've always considered myself left-leaning, socialist ideas and all that. But I find this situation in Iran developing in a way that might require us to go back and briefly look over the history of why we are in a place where there are so many misconceptions about what is happening in our homeland. Naveed, any thoughts?
I think how I see it is that I still consider myself a liberal. Whereas I think that the left has evolved to something that I don't necessarily affiliate any longer, even though I still consider myself liberal. So in that sense, I see some factions of what they call themselves left. They are somehow aligned themselves or aligned with what the Islamic Republic represents in a very weird way, and I hope that it's going to be a temporary alignment. And from where I stand, I hope that it corrects itself.
Great, yeah, no, which is why I also advocated us discussing this today, because with a little bit of explanation, we might be able to shed some light on it, because I don't blame necessarily the left political view here for aligning with the ideas. I think the trickery comes from the regime in Tehran, who is doing this knowingly and willingly. I point out, before the 1979 regime change in Iran, this same thing happened. What we refer to as coalition of red and black. If I'm not mistaken, you and I were talking about this last night, Naveed. And I think what followed is important to point out, because as soon as the regime in Tehran consolidated power, they started killing their allies, the left and the MEK and the radical left and the middle-leaning left. Everyone got thrown in jail. The 80s are famous for the story that developed. tens of thousands of people killed, hung in jails. And these were all people who actually helped the regime to come to power. So what I would like to point out, what I would like to take away from this discussion is beware. Not everything the regime says it believes or stands by. It says something and it does the other.
Exactly. This is how I came to see it as well. I think that Khomeini's ideology, if I want to really generalize it, his ideology was in a way that it basically used left or certain communist Marxist movements in Iran as a tool. And at least this is how we interpret the situation back, what was happening then. And the coalition was only to topple down the Shah,
Right.
to then be able to push the left wing of the Iranian society out of the equation and of the power.
Through brutal force, violence, essentially. Right? I was young, but I remember. So that being the first misconception that I wanted to clarify today, and which is why people like you and I are being called imperialist or Zionist or Mossad agents for what we believe is happening. I have been accused of loving war. I don't think anyone can stand and advocate innocent people being killed. But as you said something interesting last night, it's the result numbers killed that matter at the end of the day, and which scenario is going to produce more is what is at question here. We're not advocating war. We are hoping that this bloodshed leads to our freedom, right?
Yes. I think that a lot of the conversation that I have with people that are against this current intervention, they can see that, or they say this is a Zionist plot, or it's an imperialistic action by the Trump administration, or a continuation of the American imperialism. And I think that, at least how I see it from my experiences, is that we as Iranians, whether inside Iran or outside Iran, at least the majority, that they voiced their opinion by coming to the protests in Iran and abroad. We wanted to change this Islamic Republic regime. And the current situation in Israel and in America aligned with what we wanted. And this alignment resulted in what is happening recently, and Iranians do not want their freedom to be handed on a platter to them. We are participating, and we are waiting for the time that we can come and finish the job, because we know that the Israel or America would not be able to finish the job unless the Iranian people are there. So anybody who says that this was an idea of the Israel America, I think they're risking to minimize the agencies of the Iranians themselves.
Right. I 100% agree. And the interesting part, for instance, to point that out, are the numbers that have been showing up. I have historically lived in Vancouver for more than 35 years now. And there were days where we couldn't gather 100 people together in order to say something, but now 50,000, 40,000, 30,000 people show up, and that's pretty much more than half of the Iranian population here in Vancouver. In Toronto on February 14th, 350,000 people came out. I had to Google and find out the Iranian population in Toronto is estimated to be a little over 100,000. So that says a lot in terms of where we stand with this and why we advocate this as an opportunity. I think it is essential that we bring up what happened in January, just so our listenership understands that it's not for lack of trying that the regime is still in power, but that people are armed and the regime has no fear in using heavy machine guns on people, point blank. And I think I read an article yesterday, 84,600 plus people is what is estimated now. And that's just unreasonable. That's morbid. I cannot find a word to describe the way that makes me feel personally. I think it's important that people understand that the Iranian people have been asking, at least for the past 10 years, for a regime change with no luck because of the brute violence that gets applied every time someone protests.
Yes, I mean, about the January 8th and January 9th massacre, I think that we are still, at least I am, still recovering from that. It was, I think for most Iranians, was the darkest days of our lives. And we still don't know the scope and the magnitude of what happened, because there are many reports, many families kept the body of their beloveds because they were afraid to even announce, and they buried them at their yard or somewhere else. And until we get the power back and be able to, appoint committees to investigate, we don't exactly find out what the number is, but it is in tens of thousands. We have confirmed names of more than 36,700 so far. And yes, I think that at least showed to the world and the people who were willing to listen and look for that the Iranians are collectively done with what is this regime represent. And if the world needed a bigger, more clear sign, this was it.
Exactly. Would you agree that more than 90, even 95% of Iranians agree on that statement?
I think it's very hard to come up with percentage. I'm type of person who doesn't really get to the percentage, but I would say it's the number of people per 100 that they are ideologically aligned with the Islamic Republic are very low, and there's another kind of tier that their finances ties to the Islamic Republic, and those are easy to sway as long as they trust that there would be a future for them. And I think that with your assessment, I align with that assessment. I think that is very low. And how we come up with these numbers is by the regime's own statistic about the number of people who participate in mosques and Friday prayers that dropped to 78%. Meaning that only 20 something percent were showing up compared to 5 years prior, and then the 5 years prior to that. So I think that is that gives us a clear understanding, and basically the evidence shows that the numbers who are actually supporting are in a very low percentage. Definitely to the point that if there is an election or referendum, this regime would no longer cease to exist.
Which they're not going to allow that as long as they exist. They have done so using force for the past 20, 30 years at least, if not the entire time, considering what happened in the 80s.
I agree.
Right? Anur asked me to point out some of these misconceptions. So the first one that I wanted to point out is that we are not all pro-Israel. We are not all imperialists. We are not all monarchists. Constitutionalist is a word I would use to describe myself. I think reforms would have been in place in the 70s rather than later on, which what I'm personally hoping for. But how would you describe the political atmosphere of Iranians, at least in diaspora, in your experience? Because I want to draw a point later on, something I observed yesterday, but I want to hear your thoughts on that first.
It's a very good question, and I think my personal assessment is that a lot of Iranians, at least in the diaspora, and I believe the younger generations in Iran, with the internet and the social media growth of the past 10 years, they've had a chance to reassess what happened in the 70s and 80s in Iran with the quote revolution, unquote 1979, and what the Shah's era looked like, and the trajectory that we had with what happened and followed after the 1979. So I think a lot of Iranians where they were indoctrinated by ideologies, they've came to understand that the ideology that they grew up in or with is not necessarily. So that caused a collective move towards what it was pre-1979. And a lot of people were interested in learning more about the Shah and that era. I think that this is like we're still in that sort of renaissance.
Right.
I think that we're still in that sort of awakening. And I think it's very hard for me personally to pinpoint where we are exactly, because I feel that we're still in a big move. And where it's going to land, that's fascinating to me, whether it's going to be constitutional monarchy or some form of a constitutional republic. But I think that once we are able to fully dissolve this Islamic Republic and arrive to a point of a transitional government, then when we have the free internet and we're able to talk among each other on social media and basically get educated and learn about different type of governance system, especially the people in Iran who have the last say, then we can see where that goes. I don't know if that answered your question.
The reason I brought it up because I saw a protest in downtown Vancouver yesterday. I stood and watched for a while. There were maybe 100, maybe a bit more people gathered with the Iranian flags, Palestinian flags, and signs that read "No to War." I was curious to see, and I noticed there were a few organizers that were Iranian, but most of the attendees were not. And then there are our gatherings on the weekends that are in tens of thousands. To me, that's a clear indication of where the Iranian diaspora at least stands. Does that translate to what is happening in Iran as well, is my question. Because the assumption or the misconception that I want to point out is that not all tens of thousands that come out every weekend or hundreds of thousands that came out in Toronto to the response of the call from Reza Pahlavi, not all of them are monarchist or even constitutionalist. Some of them believe in that liberal democrat republic that you spoke of. Yet we all have agreed at this point that that discussion is better left for later. Right now, our target and our goal is to be done with the Islamic Republic. So that's what unites us, right? And back to my first misconception that the left and the Islamist allyship is essentially, is it the same thing? Or is it just the regime buying itself legitimacy through repeating narratives that are attractive to the Westerns?
I think that about the part that you mentioned, the number of pro-Islamic Republic and anti-war group, and when you compare their numbers with the numbers of thousands of Iranians who come to protest to support the leadership of the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi for the transition. When we compare those, I think it correlates with what is happening in the Iranian society inside Iran as well. And if I want to speak to, correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about if the Islamic Republic right now has any influence by activating their affiliates or supporters in, let's say, the West or Canada to come out and support. Is that the point that you were?
Well, the misconception being that Iranians are not the same as the regime, not the Islamic Republic, right? And that's not the narrative that the Islamic Republic broadcasts. outside Iran that no, people are supportive of us. They come out and gather, and they don't. We've seen those videos. We've seen
I
the way
see.
they were tailored, right? So that misconception, I think, needs to be shattered because a determining majority of Iranian people hate this regime.
Yes, yes.
I know religious people who have withdrawn from the religious practices because it's associated with what the regime broadcasts and claims, right?
Yes, we have this expression, we call them temporary compatriots, that whenever nothing was going on, there was no threats, they were basically continuing to do what they were doing, suppressing and threatening the normal Iranians. And then as soon as there was some threats, whether from Israel or America or any other country, they would wave the flag of compatriotism and asking the Iranians to participate.
Right.
And those are the same people who were lobbying for decades to present the Islamic Republic as the representation of the Iranian people and Iranian culture. And I think it kind of reminds me how baffled I was when I first moved in to Canada in 2005, how many were asking me questions that I had am I affiliate, like what is this, what is that, and I think that yes, there is still in the mind of many Canadians, the Islamic Republic is Iran, and confusion around the titles doesn't help. Like, I watch news, and a lot of times Iran is being Iran's name is being used as an Islamic Republic, and I think that in the case of Afghans, they've done a really good job to separate themselves from Taliban, at least 10 years ago prior. But we somehow still hear, even now, that the name of Iran is being used interchangeably with the Islamic Republic regime. But, we among themselves, we don't say that. We say Islamic Republic in Iran, or even we go further, we say occupying Islamic Republic regime.
Right. An occupying force, exactly.
Occupying
So,
forces.
so would you agree that this misconception is created by likes of NIAC or ICC here in Canada, being funded by the regime to kind of create that narrative and create that image?
I think it's pretty strange that after like hundreds of thousands of Iranians coming out and live in Canada and keep saying that we are not the Islamic Republic, the media, or certain medias at least, insist on using Iran as Islamic Republic and interchangeably use these two words. And that gives me the impression that there is a force out there that fights us to correct that narrative. Say yes, there is attempt to paint Iran as Islamic Republic and Islamic Republic as Iran.
And don't you wonder then, why is it that these people in US or Canada have such loud chairs? Like, I don't want to name any names, but we take a look around in some of the most prestigious universities. These guys have titles, and they are literally, as you and I know, they're paid by the regime to be here and be that voice and create that propaganda, yet they're perceived with warmth and a welcoming manner here in the West, especially the U.S., maybe not so much Canada, but in Iran, we shout that to the U.S. every day. Every kid at school has to shout that before going to class in the morning. Yet, you look and Larijani's daughter has a teaching chair here in the U.S. Like, how do we wrap our head around that? Like, how do we get along with that?
I think it comes down to money and wealth, and they basically are being bought. I think that some of it is ideological, but most of it has something to do where the money goes. And if we follow that, I think my speculation is that this is what is happening. These are the direct beneficiary of what is going on in Iran in terms of basically 60% of the Iranian economy goes through IRGC institutions. And there are millions, hundreds of millions, and upward of billions sometimes being taken from the Iranian people and brought into Canada, brought into U.S. We know many names.
Dollars you're talking about, right? When you say billions.
Yeah. Dollars. Yeah. Canadian dollars that just one guy brought in 11 billion Canadian dollars, and he resides in Toronto. And these are not just one-off. There are most likely in the thousands. And they sometimes also operate as sleeping cells as well. So I think that I don't want to go too far from your point, but I think that one of the reasons that we see the problems that occurred in the economy of Iran is because of these people who are coming and immigrating basically to Canada. And we ask ourselves that if you're so upset about the imperialism and capitalism and many things that the Western society represents, and you're against it, why are you moving to Canada, or why your children, for a better future, move to the West, Canada, US, or Australia, or
your enemies essentially, right?
Pardon?
They're enemies essentially, right?
Yeah, if you guys are enemies, why are you coming to here, coming to your enemy's territory? Why don't you stay and make it a better place? And sometimes they argue about the sanctions, but we all know that it was the corruption of the Islamic Republic and RGC that resulted in the sanctions. I mean, that's another whole argument there. But
would you associate what we just described as a part of a strategy that the regime uses? Taqiyya is a solid foundation for the way they do things, isn't it? If a lie is not a lie, is not a sin if it is in your benefit, or the benefit of dispersing your ideology.
Are you asking that if Islamic Republic?
I'm asking if this is what it is.
I missed for a second. So you're asking that if the Islamic Republic is sending these people on purpose to basically influence the
lie,
mind.
to basically lie and create that narrative, that the misconception we were referring to, that the Iranian people love their regime, that they would stand and fight, and they don't. That's what we see on the news every day. You and I, we watch clips coming out of Iran.
I think it's very hard for a listener to believe that, but I would say yes, it is. It is it is what is happening. Not all of them, but enough to influence. And they have money, they have the connection, they have the agenda. And I think that the infiltration happened many years ago. And it still goes, but it's very counterintuitive for a everyday Canadian to believe that the Islamic Republic had influence on the West, but I felt it, and I'm sure that many felt it here as well.
Oh, I mean, us Iranians, we've learned it through our lived experience. We've watched the regime lie every time about everything. And so now our initial reaction to any news that comes out of their side is, well, that's a lie, right?
Yes.
Okay, here, I'm going to give you a challenging one. I see Israeli flags at our gatherings, and I get a feeling that half of our allies here in Canada are turned off by it, maybe even more than half. You and I, we both know that the range of the political beliefs in the Iranian community is just as wide as anywhere else. And we know that some on the right would support. And would you say that that's a common mentality in the Iranian diaspora? Or is that something that we see more here than inside Iran? Why is it that there is such support among Iranians for Israel?
Yeah, it's very confusing, I believe, for a lot of people to see it and to watch. I think that it's a bit multi-layered. It's a bit of a multi-layered topic. I think, and there's like a few things that comes to my mind. One is that as Iranians, after the 1979, we were heavily indoctrinated to support the Palestinian cause. I mean, Yasser Arafat was the first guest of the revolution in 1979. Literally, a few days after the 1979 revolution, while the best soldiers of the Iranian military were being executed in the same building, they hosted Yasser Arafat. And for decades, as kids growing up, we were supposed to express, our hate in the school towards United States, Israel, and say good things about Palestine. So that forced narrative kind of backfired. And whether we think that the Islamic Republic used Palestinian cause as a tool or not, that resulted in a complete resentment of the Palestinian cause and Hezbollah and what represented that whole movement and I don't want to get into the relationship between Israel and Palestine here, but I'm trying to draw attention to Iranian people and how they felt that a lot of the Iranian wealth for the past half century was being directed towards at least outside Iranian society instead of investments into the economy of the Iran and the Iranian people. So that backfire resulted in Iranians look to the opposite narrative, whereas like, wait a second, is Israel a good guy or a bad guy? And obviously it's not that easy. That's not, we cannot use that expression about any country, or is this country good or bad? It's just alignment and disalignment. And also another part of it, and I tie it to one, I kind of join them together, is that we have like Persian Jews or Iranian Jews are some of the basically they're OGs of the Jews in the world. We should not forget that 2,700 years ago, there were Jews that was freed by the Iranians in Babylonia, and it had engraved in their minds. And a lot of the Jews stayed in Iran from that time and even prior to that. And once the 1979 happened, a lot of Iranian Jews had to flee to Israel. Some of them came to America and the West and other places, but most of them went to Israel. And a lot of people don't know that the highest percentage of the Iranian diaspora anywhere in the world exists in Israel. So, if the Iranian diaspora in Canada have a population of 1 to 3%, in Israel, that is upwards of 6 to 8% of the entirety of the Israel population. So that, and they are powerful, they are cultured, and they never forgot their roots. They still use Iranian names, they still cook Iranian food. So a lot of them were communicating back to their families in Iran in the past 50 years. And if you look at what Israel has done in the past 10 years, the operations that, they talk about Mossad, like how did Mossad knew about all these generals, where they lived and how they killed them? Well, it came through the Iranian Jews who were speaking Iranian fluently, and they went back and they infiltrated the Islamic Republic regime. So when you tie these two together, the kind of reconnection of the Iranian Jews and the Israel society with the Iranians, and also the experience that the Islamic Republic caused, I think that a lot of Iranians were showing affinity towards Israel, and even though a lot of Iranians know that at some point they hated for wrong reasons, they hated Israel for wrong reasons, the Israelis never turned their back. At least this is what they feel, that Israel never turned back and never said things that undermine Iranian culture. And Iranians were like, wait a second, like, what are we doing here? We are supporting Palestinian cause, and instead we receive treatments that we don't deserve. Is it possible that we went overboard about Israel?
This is another regime lie? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
That this is another regime lie?
Which one is?
Oh, affiliation or the emotions that they created for us as children for countries like the U.S. or Israel?
I think it was fabricated. Yeah, I think it was like pushed as an indoctrination to. I mean, the Khomeini, even before coming to power, he was an anti-Jew and a Jew hatred, and a lot of the Islamist movements of the time were not happy about the formation of the country of Israel. And the Khomeini was one of those people. And ideologically, after gaining the power, they pushed it into the books, cultural events, however they could, to make sure that the Iranians and the newborn generation would hate Israel. But clearly it backfired. And
okay, so what you're saying is that essentially people are creating this sentiment in order to oppose the regime? Act of defiance?
I think that is a big part of it. It's a big. I'm sorry to use that word. I apologize. It's a big middle finger to the Islamic Republic by bringing Israel that look like you tried, but we're not. And this is the way that they show their opposing the Islamic Republic. And I'm not discussing it's a right thing to do or a wrong thing to do, but I think that is my observation.
Right. No, I agree with that. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that there's a lot, but I think we covered a lot of different things. I'm just hoping that. Let me rephrase. I look forward for this regime full collapse or absolute surrender, so we can start rebuilding Iran and connect with all of our neighbors, with the Arab countries and in the Persian Gulf, with the Israel, with the every other country, even China and Russia, United States. Iran is situated in the cross section of Europe, Asia, and Africa. And we cannot have a regime governing that land that does not want to be part of the bigger community. And that's the will of Iranian. The Iranian culture is all about that. And we want our country back.
And hopefully peace in the region as a result.
I think that would be inevitable. The peace will come as soon as we can get this regime out and help a smooth transition. It would be peace back into the Middle East.
All right. Well, thank you, Naveed. Thank you very much for your time. This was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. And let's do this again. I look forward to that.
Thank you for giving us this platform, and I appreciate it. Hope talking to you soon again.
You too. Likewise.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Conclusion. Our friends today shared thoughtful perspectives on the misconceptions surrounding the Iranian diaspora's stance on the war, the vital distinction between the Iranian people and the Islamic Republic, and ways the regime works to shape its image in the West. These are complicated conversations, and we're grateful for the clarity, honesty, and lived experience you brought into the space. We look forward to welcoming you back again and to inviting more voices into this ongoing dialogue, because understanding grows when communities speak with one another and not past each other. You're listening to CFRO. Stay tuned for more programming.
چشمه هنر دور از تو اندیشه بدان آینده مانی تو جا بدان ای دشمن ار تو سنگ خاره ای من آهنم جان من فدای خاک پاک میهنم مهر تو چون شد پیشم دور از تو نیست اندیشم در راه تو کی ارزشی دارد این جان ما پاینده باد خاک ایران ما سنگ کوهت در و گوهر است خاک دشتت بهتر از زر است مهرت از دل کی برون کنم بر کوبی مهر تو چون کنم تو گردش جهان و دور آسمان بپاس نور این زمین همیشه رهن مای ماست مهر تو چون شد پیشم دور از تو نیست اندیشم در راه تو کی ارزشی دارد این جان ما پاینده باد خاک ایران ما ایران ای خرم بهشت من روشن از تو سرنوشت من گر آتش بارد به پیکرم جز مهرت در دل نپرورم آب و خاک و مهر تو سرشته شد گلم مهر اگر برون رود کنی شود دلم مهر تو چون شد پیشم دور از تو نیست اندیشم در راه تو کی ارزشی دارد این جان ما پاینده باد خاک ایران ما ایران
ایران غرق انقلاب است. کشور ما تاریخ ما در سینه گر قرار گرفته گویی اهورا مستا دوباره در نور خود مرا گرفته سرودی سر میدهم باز تاره از رنج و نشیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش هم ای پدر هم ای پسر مرخیز و باماش و هنگام تا درد آن تجربه تلخ ما را نکشیده در خواب بگذار هر دم ببرند گرگ‌ها در لباس میش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ای کارگر ای برزگر راحت قانون ادامه دارد در این زمان که پرتاب یزدان از هر سو بر تو میبارد پس پیش به سوی آزادی از بحر یزدان تا شیر ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پشت ارتجا تیریزی ویران آبانی تا زنده سازیم سنت‌های می از قلب آیین و چیز ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش
با روزی که تمام این دلبشو انقلاب تموم بشه و ما در روشنایی، نور و سعادت مردم کشورمون غرق بشیم.
نه خارجی نه بیگانه نه مستشارهای ویرانی نه چیر خاران نه کاسه لیسان فقط هم رزمان ایرانی تا با شرافت میهنی بسازیم قبر فرزندان خویش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش مردم بیایید داخل صف ما اکنون که آغاز رویاست دشمنان بدانید ما زنده هستیم بعد از ما هم ایران پابرجاست آن روح شیطان ما را فریب داد با صد شعار مردمی ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش پرچم ما پرچم ایران غرق خون شهیدان روی شانه هامان هم میکنیمش در هر خیابان و میدان آمست دلقتان را برداری از روی تسبیح و ریش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش ایران غرق انقلاب است به پیش به پیش به پیش